Let's go ahead and finish up number 1 on page 6 of your note packet. So we had just simplified our radical. 8 was 4 times 2, which is 2 2s and a 2. So 2 of those 2 came out as a 2. Other 2 stayed under. So this next thing I'm going to say is super, super important. I am never, ever allowed to cancel these. Oh, 2 goes into both of those. But what I am allowed to do is take a GCF out of all 3 terms. So I have a problem like this on the test. 2 plus or minus radical 6 over 6. That problem cannot be simplified. There's a 1 here, and nothing's common between those 3. And do you know how many students want to make that 1 and make that 3? A lot. Don't do it. The only thing you can do is GCF, and this one has nothing common, so you would leave it. But on the other hand, this one that we just did does have something in common. See how there's a 2? So what I tell students, so that you make sure and don't cancel incorrectly, is just divide each of those by 2. And that's how you can simplify. So x equals -4 plus or minus 1, which you can leave off, radical 2 over 7. So -4 plus or minus 1 radical 2 over 7. So all I did was take out a greatest common factor. So my 2 solutions are going to be -4 plus radical 2 over 7 and -4 minus radical 2 over 7. And that would be my 2 solutions. So that's not so bad. Once you memorize the formula, a lot of it's old stuff like simplifying radicals from the last chapter, but pretty easy stuff, I think. Okay, so let's do one more together and then you guys can tackle one. How about that? So what's going to be the first step on 2? I'll put the answer in the view in case you didn't get all that. So step 1 is set equal to 0. Just like factoring, you can't factor or do the quadratic formula unless it's set equal to 0. So to set it equal to 0, this one's going to need add 10, add 10. And remember, you can't add 10 to 24x. They're unlike terms, so make it into 3 terms. 6x squared plus 24x plus 10, and now we'll have 0 on the right, and that was our goal. So a nice little trick of the trade, if you see something common here, make your numbers smaller, because getting big, huge radicals that you have to break down is not very fun. So make it a nice small number, or as small as you can. So what's common to all these? 2. So just take a 2 out of everything, and I'll get the exact same answer as someone who didn't see that. But right away when I saw that 24, I'm like, oh, that's going to be big. And then I looked and went, oh, wait a minute, there's something common there. So my new equivalent equation is going to be 3x squared plus 12x plus 5 equals 0. And we are ready to go. So it's set equal to 0. So now we can name our pieces. A is 3, B is 12, and C is 5. And I'm going to go ahead and do another sheet of paper. Again, just so I don't run out of room. So I'm going to rewrite the problem. So it was number 2, page 6 of 7.2. So we were at this step, 3x squared plus 12x plus 5 equals 0. A is 3, B is 12, C is 5. Okay, so I just wrote down what we had there. So now I won't be smushed for room. So let's go ahead and write our quadratic formula again. Remember, write it 7 times, you'll have it memorized. So opposite of b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So time to plug and chug. So opposite of b, this is 12, so I'm going to write negative 12 plus or minus, and I always work this out before I put it in. So if you don't know what 12 squared is, I'm sure most of you do, but if you don't, just hit 12 squared because you always want that one in. And by the way, if that had been negative 12, don't type it in like this because that's not negative 12 times negative 12. If it's negative, it needs to be in parentheses. So the moral of the story is this b squared, it will never be negative. So if you see you have a negative value right there, you did something wrong because any number squared is positive. And you're probably going, well, why is that negative? Because that is 12 squared, change the sign. So yes, 12 squared is positive, but because you didn't put that negative in parentheses, that means opposite. That's why it came out negative. And the calculator knows. If you forget a parenthesis, it knows. So if you're putting a negative, so if that had been negative 12, I would have needed to type it like that to get my positive. But that first number under the radical will always be positive because b squared is always positive. So 12 times 12, 144, minus 4 times 3 times 5. All over 2 times 3. So opposite of b plus or minus b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So now this is the step. Move this up a little bit. So this is a step where you want to write your empty radical. So get it all ready for the calculator. And remember, we don't type the radical in the calculator. We just, we have to simplify by hand. And then 2 times 3 is 6. So then on our calculator, we type in what's under the radical. Without typing the radical, remember 144 minus 4 times 3 times 5. So check to make sure they match. They do. And that's going to be 84. Now this is where the last chapter comes in. You have to break down this radical each time. You can't type it in the calculator. They won't take decimals in a fraction. So we need to go up here and factor 84. So 84 is what? 2 and 42, which is 2 and 21, which is what? 3 and 7. And if you're not sure it's right, all you have to do is type it into your calculator. 2 times 2 times 3 times 7. 2 times 2 times 3 times 7. And if you've done it correctly, it should give you your number back, which it does, right? 84 it is. Okay, so now we know how to break down 84. So it's going to be x equals negative 12 plus or minus. So 84 is 2 2s, a 3, and a 7. All over 6. So from chapter 6, our last chapter, we know that 2 of anything under a square root comes out as a single. So that is now going to turn into negative 12 plus or minus 2 radical 21. So 21's left underneath. There's no pairs. All over 6. So now you have to ask yourself the question, does that simplify? Or a better question is there a GCF? Yes, 2 is common. So do as I said so you don't accidentally just cancel 2 of them. If it's common, you take it out of every single term. So that's going to look like -6 plus or minus 1 radical 21, which is just radical 21, all over 3. So now let's go up and write that in our solution sets. So that'll be -6 plus radical 21 over 3 and -6 minus radical 21 over 3. And there you have it. Okay, let's go back to the page then and do that last problem. So we can carry the answer over here, and I'm going to write C back, or C attached, so that we know we did that one. So our 2 answers were -6 plus radical 21 over 3 and -6 minus radical 21 over 3. Okay, so we're ready for the last one on that page. Nice thing is, look at it, already set equal to 0. Woohoo! So let's go ahead and start. So when it's set equal to 0, then you can jump right into your A, B, and C. A is 6, B is -3, C is 7. And I would shut off the video now and work this one on your own, and then pick up and compare with me after you're done. Okay? So I'm going to start by writing the quadratic formula. This will be my 4th time today. Think I got it memorized. Opposite of b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So ready to plug and chug. Move this up just a little bit. So opposite of b, look closely. We haven't done one like this yet. B is -3 this time. So this should be +3 because this is read opposite of b. So +3 plus or minus b squared. -3 times -3 is +9. Remember, that first number is never, ever negative. Minus 4 times 6 times 7. A is 6, C is 7, all over 2 times 6. So that's going to simplify to x equals 3 plus or minus empty radical over 12. So now let's type that in our calculator. 9 minus 4 times 6 times 7. So 9 minus 4 times 6 times 7. Don't type the radical, just what's underneath. -159. Ooh, ooh, ooh. What does a negative under a radical turn into? Imaginary. So this is going to be 3 plus or minus. Now we have to see if 159 factors. So 19, that's 15. So 3 goes into 159. 3 goes into 15 5 times. 3 goes into 9 3 times. And 53 is prime. 3 is prime. So since there are no pairs, that means it can't be broke down. But I do have to do this. No matter what, I have to do that. I can never leave a negative under a square root. So that negative comes out as I. 159 has no pairs. And over 12. So my 2 solutions are 3 plus I radical 159 over 12 and 3 minus I radical 159 over 12. So we'll start from there.